Well, hey there, guys. How you doing tonight? Welcome back to our Opening Minds live stream. I hope you're all doing well tonight. Just another interesting week in our study of the paranormal and related phenomena. And tonight we're going to talk about recent events in the past couple days, about your favorite topic and mine, UFO disclosure. So let's see who we've got here tonight. Everything sounding good on the audio? Okay. So we've got Luscious Jules. Hope you're doing well in the south there. Not freezing too much. We've got Miss Posterity. Hello. Nancy, how are you doing? On the other side from Jules, going that direction to the northwest. Hey, Nancy, how's it going? And we've got Nadinella. Hello. Mel, SCP. Michael, how's it going? And yeah, hey guys. So Michael from North Idaho wants to know what the fractal is going on. And that's what's going on, Michael. It's fractal. So we're going to talk about that tonight, and then I want to take your questions. And I think the next time we do this, I'm going to set up a Zoom link so you can, anyone who wants to call in can join in the broadcast. What do you think about that? So we can have a actual conversation. I'm going to look into that. This platform is capable of bringing in other people. I just need to research it a little bit, how to do it while we're live here. So, well, I hope you're, chilly. Nancy says it's chilly up in the northwest. Yes, so it's pretty cool here in the central mountain states. I'm looking forward to a little warming up here, but we had it good for weeks, guys. We had like 60s and 50s, so no complaints here. Oh, good. Jules says she's got 70s down there in the Bama. So, okay, looking good there. So this is what I wanted to talk about tonight. This is kind of the general themes that we're going to talk about. Let me bring this up because we've had a lot of information this week. I mean, boy, oh boy, this has been really interesting. And let me go ahead and bring up this kind of sequence of events, okay, that we had. So let me go ahead and bring this up here. 1 second. Screen share. So, yeah, we had this thing going on between Obama and Trump, which was very interesting. First, we had Obama in this interview a couple days ago where the podcaster Ryan said to him, the question he's gotten for years, are aliens real, right? And what about aliens? And he said, oh, they're real. And, he said it in a very matter-of-fact way. I know they kind of walked back on it the next day, but from my perspective, he said they're real. And then he said, but, I haven't seen them personally. And then he made some mention about Area 51, but like haha, but they're not at Area 51, which is different than what I've heard, actually, folks. We can talk about that in a second. But he kind of goes back, and then it's a very short couple comments. Then yesterday, we have President Trump flying to Georgia to give a speech about the economy, and one of the reporters, in I thought a very astute way, asks him, what do you think about Obama's comments, right? And then the next thing you know, he's saying, well, that President Obama, I'm sure you've all seen this. You can listen to it if you want. It's online. He shouldn't have mentioned that. He revealed classified information. Like, we're not sure what was that. Is it classified that extraterrestrials exist? Is that classified? Is it some mentioning Area 51? I think there was a time when mentioning the No Such Agency was illegal for people that worked there or something like that. I mean, we don't know what that was. But then Trump made this very interesting statement saying that he was going to get Obama out of this mess by declassifying it, right? Hold on one sec. Just turning down this fan here. I think, Nancy, if you've got that fire roaring, it's a lot less noisy than a natural gas fan heater going behind me here. So that's what started this whole hubbubaloo. And so we actually, Michael, to answer your question, what the fractal is going on here, we don't actually know what's going on here. I did hear on a very prominent UFO live stream yesterday that Trump and Obama, know each other and play golf or something. That is not true. I looked it up. Trump and Obama have never played golf together. Trump made some comments in 2016 that he thought Obama played too much golf. Yeah, hello. Here's looking at you, kid. They don't play golf together. There's no evidence that they're friends or anything else like that. So we actually, I don't know what's going on, but Obama has been making statements like this. And so before them, the Clintons made statements like this too. You remember their relationship with Rockefeller, the one at his ranch in Jackson Hole, and we saw that picture of I forget which Rockefeller it was. You can remind me, right? And Hillary Clinton is holding a UFO related book. I forget which exact book it was, but you could see from the title. Now here, I'm going to tell you something, guys, because I'm from New York, and I ran into someone when I was visiting there in the past few years who knew someone that worked for the Clintons in Chappaqua. And she said that she had been told they had a crop circle book on their coffee table. Okay? I don't know which crop circle book it was, but they have obviously an interest in these topics. There was Lawrence Rockefeller. There was Project Starlight. There was that meeting on the Rockefeller estate in northern central Westchester near the Hudson, at Pocantico Hills, at that conference center that's up there that I've seen since I'm from Westchester. Jacques Vallée and a lot of Hal Puthoff was there, I believe, a lot of UFO heavyweights. So we've had presidents interested in this before. And I'm going to tell you something, a story I heard from another friend in Westchester, that there was this place, I won't name it, that President Clinton, former President Clinton, liked to visit in Westchester. And a person at this establishment asked him, "Hey, Mr. President, what's the truth about UFOs?" Right? And according to my friend, someone he talked to, security, a guard who was there at the time, what President Clinton, former President Clinton, said, and I hope I'm not giving away any classified information by doing this, is that I am told this is how he responded when the person who was running the establishment asked him about, are there UFOs? I am told what he said is, I can't really talk about it, but there's a base 200 miles off the coast of California. Hello. So, I mean, this is something that these presidents know about. And I think we've sort of been expecting something like this for a long time, right? if anyone remembers what that book Hillary was holding at the Jackson Hole Lawrence Rockefeller event, I mean, so this is something, and of course, Grant Cameron, I heard many lectures from Grant Cameron over the years at UFO conferences, starting in the late 90s until not too long ago, about what presidents know about UFOs. This is something that we're told they don't have a high enough security clearance to know about because they're only there for 4 or 8 years, right? You've heard this, guys, right? And so there are people with higher security clearances than the President of the United States. It's on a need-to-know basis. But they might come across information occasionally or even be briefed on it. Remember David Grush said he was a presidential briefer and that he briefed the president, not, just about UFOs and things, but about daily events. They get their early morning, 5 or 6 a.m. briefing every day. And Grush was one of those people. But we have evidence that they know about this topic, and obviously the pressure has been building. And in this case, my feeling is that Trump just didn't want to be outdone by Obama, because, the people some politicians like to be the center of attention. There are people that enjoy this attention. And I think that Trump really didn't want to be outdone here again. I mean, it's this is the biggest topic ever, really, right? And there's so much we don't know. Okay, so I think he didn't want to be outdone, and he knows that this topic can get the attention away from other subjects that he doesn't want to be associated with. I was been saying to friends recently, guys, that, hey, Dave, how's it going? Nice to see you again. Dave. I've been hearing that this is something that's going to come out, and I thought the only topic that could really save the Trump administration from total disaster, the direction it's been heading in my personal view, just look at the Supreme Court decision on the Trump tariffs, reversing those tariffs. The only thing that could save them was UFO disclosure. It's the only thing that is so big. And isn't that what Ronald Reagan said a long time ago, that the only topic that could unite all of us on the planet together is this realization that we're not alone. There's other types of intelligence out there. And I think the implications of this topic are so huge that it's unavoidable. Just because politicians need support, they need attention, and this is a free way to get that attention, is just to start talking about it. We've had congressional hearings recently, the last one in last September being the best in my view, with the best, the witnesses who've said a lot so far. So let's just talk about this for a second. The elements of this that I think that matter here, and then we'll look at some pictures and we'll talk about this and go to questions, because there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening recently. So let me just go and share this. The components should be components of UFO disclosure. In my view, right? This is the magic of technology. I can fix it right here on the screen. The components of disclosure, in my view, that we just need to address is, first of all, they're the NDAs, right? The people I've talked to and run into for the past 30 years at conferences and who've taken my RV classes and so forth, many of whom I haven't identified yet, have told me that these NDAs are really serious business. And Eric Davis said this recently in his interview with Peter Skafish of the Soul Foundation that was created a couple of years ago, this nonprofit based out of California. And this interview between Eric Davis and Peter Skafish a couple years ago, just a couple weeks ago, Eric Davis, I would encourage you to look for this interview because if you're interested, because Eric Davis said, look, I would love to sit down in front of Congress and tell them everything I know, but I can't do that without a presidential directive absolving me of my agreement not to talk about things that I've seen, according to Davis suggesting where the alien bodies are, or living aliens, or crash retrieval sites, right? So you've heard him say that. So a lot of these, and I've talked to other people here, folks. A lot of these people I've talked to said I signed NDAs. The federal government could sue me back into the Stone Ages. One guy said to me, if I hid in the deepest depths of Siberia, they would still find me. This is what an engineer who works for a Fortune 500 company told me. And he said this is companies that you've heard of before. They don't only do regular materials research, they do black budget materials research on recovered UFO parts. So NDAs that's the first step, is NDAs. The president would have to issue an executive order, in my view, because we've seen these congressional hearings, right? Let's see if I can move this window over a little bit. Is that gonna? Yes. Okay, there we go. Yes. So the first step is some sort of presidential executive order to absolve people of the NDAs they signed. I don't think anything less than that is going to do it. Maybe you have another point of view. The second level is once we have those NDAs lifted from a executive presidential order, because you've heard people like James Lukatsky and others say, Eric Davis, I'm not willing to say anything in front of Congress. I don't care if they subpoena me. These NDAs outrank them. So that's a serious issue. Then we have all these special access programs, the black budget side of NASA. I've been told, and we'll talk about this in a second, that NASA has a black budget side, which we don't hear about, and a separate launch facility somewhere else in the world launching black budget programs. Department of Defense programs, UFO recovery programs, we don't know. Aerospace contractors and question. What else? How many of these programs are out there? Hidden programs funded by billions of dollars that are hidden behind special access program status. And then the other level of this are the disinformation programs. Disinformation programs, which we have heard James Lukatsky talk about recently. Now, I don't know if you saw these two interviews with James Lukatsky, and he is the author of, a lot of books recently, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, and then his other books. So we've had him in this first interview, then the second interview on Jeremy Corbell's YouTube channel, the Weaponized Broadcasts, right? So what Lukatsky is telling us, guys, first of all, he speaks very cryptically because he signed these NDAs, and he has said that if Congress asked him his name in a public hearing and he had signed an NDA saying he wouldn't say his name, he wouldn't agree to say his name. I mean, he is restricted by these NDAs too. But he's told us that in his books, this is the third one. There was Initial Revelation, Skinwalkers of the Pentagon, Initial Revelation, New Insights. He says this is all he's allowed to say, and you guys paid for this. And he's putting it all in this book. All these cases, what happened at Skinwalker Ranch. I just got done reading about the Nimitz incident. He's this former Defense Warning Office worker who knows a lot about adversaries' missile systems. He's very technical, and he knows what he's talking about. all the MUFON sightings. They worked with MUFON, OSAP. So this is a guy that was the head of OSAP. And on these interviews with Corbell and Knapp, he says as much as he believes he's allowed to say. So one interesting thing that really caught my attention was that he said, we are all being submitted to a disinformation program right now. And it's well and alive on the internet, and it's all BS because, and he quoted, if you listen to these interviews that he did recently, I was just reviewing some earlier today. He says these comments about OSAP being interested in werewolves and Bigfoot and poltergeists, and it's like, ha, ha, ha. He says that is the disinformation program. So anyone who you hear ridiculing him in his books about, it's some sort of poltergeist chasing program, ha, ha, ha. Lakatsky's telling us that's this disinformation program. Now, what's one specific program that you know about that's subject to disinformation? You've all heard about this, right? Kona Blue. What were we told about Kona Blue? And Jules would know this because she's part of our RV group, which you're also all welcome to join. We meet once a month, online Zoom group, and just view targets. Beginners are welcome. So what was one component of this apparent Kona Blue program, which was never funded, we were told? Remote viewing. If you'll remember, about a year or two ago, we heard about some unfunded program which had been declassified, the program proposal, right? And it was called Kona Blue. You can look it up. And the proposal had, it was budgeting for all sorts of paranormal investigations, Skinwalker Ranch portal area type stuff. Okay, which, as we know, happens throughout the United States and throughout the world in certain hotspots. This is what I give lectures about in the upcoming months, if you'd like to say hi at all these low-place conferences I'm going to be presenting at, about the nature of ball lightning orbs and the physics behind it, about why you get Bigfoot and UFOs and orbs all showing up at the same time. It's something we'll just look at my past lectures that I'll be putting up some more from the Denver area in the past couple of weeks on my YouTube channel here. In the next 2 weeks, I will upload 2 more presentations, one to Colorado MUFON. I put up one from the Paranormal Research Forum in Lakewood, Colorado. It's already up from about 2 weeks ago, and I talk about that. But what Lakatsky's saying is, guess what, folks? He said Kona Blue is operating right now, and that this idea that it was not funded is the misinformation. So again, going back to Michael's question at the beginning, what the fractal is going on. Guys, if you're confused, it's not your fault, because there are disinformation programs going on. Is Kona Blue unfunded? Even George Knapp in this freaking interview couldn't believe it. He said, you can just watch it. It's in part 1. He said, I thought that they told us Kona Blue was never funded. It was just a proposal to continue OSAP, right? OSAP going from 2008 to 2011, 12, according to Lakatsky. This is at the $22 million program. Lakatsky tells us it wasn't a program to study adversaries' weapon systems like the title sounds, OSAP. I won't say the whole name because it's one of these Pentagon acronyms. It's so long. It was a UFO study program. And once they started the UFOs, they started finding cryptids. They found shadow people. They found weird electromagnetic failure and all the other stuff that I'm fascinated by. I love to talk about, that I saw in crop circle areas in the UK over the past 30 years. All that stuff. They couldn't separate the UFOs from the cryptid sightings and the so-called hitchhiker effect and the weird anomalies, which I believe that Jay Stratton said was he the one who saw it inside one of the buildings when they first visited Skinwalker Ranch? Am I right here? It was something that looked like Tubular Bells from the album Tubular Bells, kind of a weird object rotating in the kitchen in front of his eyes. And again, it's a whole nother subject of why this stuff shows up. I think we're getting a sense of why you get some of these life forms and technologies, whatever they are, in this other reality that's next to us. But anyway, that's what OSEP ended up studying. Kona Blue is going to be an extension of it. We're told that Kona Blue never was funded, but now Lakatsky's saying, oh, it's fun, it's operating right now, which means they're hiring remote viewers and other people, and it's a special access program. Now, one of the things I've heard in researching these subjects, starting in 1996 when I was first exposed and took classes in remote viewing, was that these special access programs spend a lot of money on misinformation, disinformation. It can be larger than the project itself, right? To cover it up. So, guys, I don't have an answer to this question right now, but we don't know how much of our own tax money is being spent to psychological warfare against the American people to create misinformation about these topics. Who was the other person that's told us so much why there's a UFO? That there is a UFO Bigfoot connection. Stan Gordon, from the researcher from Pennsylvania, who's been studying this since 1959, or at least been involved since he was a 10-year-old, answering the phone for the UFO research group in Pittsburgh. It's intrinsically connected, and there's reasons for that. Even though it's not the exact same phenomena, it's like another reality where these phenomena coexist around us in the spaces that we're in. So, just in my own experience, guys, just looking at people I've encountered at conferences, I know this has to be big because these were all people that... Richard Hoover, for example, I met him in 2015 or so at one of the conferences. Now, he said that there had been a cover-up within NASA of the NASA photos, the lunar objects, lunar anomalies, and so forth. And I talked to him a lot, and the Skylab incident where he was listening in, he was in the room, the Capcom, when one of these Skylab missions, Owen Garriott sees an object outside the, I put it on the thumbnail here for this YouTube video today, sees that strange object out the window, and he tries to find out about it, told it, the film didn't come out and all that BS, all that nonsense. So guess what? There has been Max Derek Shani has been talking recently to Ross Coulthart about this. And he's been talking about these lunar anomalies. Now, I first came across a lot of this, not only from listening to Richard Hoagland on Art Bell a long time ago, but Ken Johnson was also at one of these Open Minds UFO conference when MUFON Arizona took it over in outside of Scottsdale in Fountain Hills on a Native American reservation there. And Ken Johnson wrote this book called Ken's Moon, and he showed us many pictures of anomalies. I don't have the book with me, otherwise I'd show it to you right now. The weird thing was Ken Johnson disappeared after this conference, and we haven't heard much from him. There were some discrepancies in his alleged bio and so forth, but I found him to be a very credible person. He had been what he called a citizen astronaut, trained to go, the oldest person to train to go to Mars, but he didn't make it to that program, but he made it to the shuttle program. Someone who never goes on the shuttle but gets trained in case they need them. And he showed us picture after picture in Fountain Hills of these weird anomalies on the moon. And I hadn't heard, and one of them was like this weird whole bunch of domes inside the moon and stuff like this. And then the pictures were erased. Like he saw this picture of domes on one of the events at NASA. He said that they showed these domes, not our own, in a crater. And then when we went back to look for the film to see it himself, it was gone. And he asked Oberberg, or the director of NASA at the time, someone he knew, what happened to the domes. And James Oberg said to him, they were never there. Something like that. I don't know if it was James Oberg, but this is one of the people that he mentioned who were covering this up. They were never there. Well, this is exactly what we've been hearing. We heard this recently again from Ross Coulthart in this interview he did. Let me find, with Max Derek Shawnee. You can find this on Ross Coulthart's. Yeah, here he is. His YouTube channel, where they've been talking with this person that works for, what was it, the UAP, one of the UAP organizations. He's a physicist. And he was asked to look at these lunar anomalies. Max Derek Shawnee. And Ross has a couple of these interviews in the past couple of days with him. Hey, Wells, how you doing? Welcome. So guess what? I mean, Ross Coulthart and Derek Shawnee have been talking about these same lunar anomalies. Because of Ken Johnson, some of it wasn't totally transparent about his background. I found him very credible. I found the book very, it was a good autobiography, self-made autobiography, Ken Johnson, of these lunar anomalies. And Johnson said there were a lot of them, and he showed us the pictures, these odd things that you've seen that look like this, things that just look a little too, like, look at this. It looks really built in the middle, doesn't it? It's ramps here in this square. I mean, now, what we learned from Derek Shawnee is they haven't released the good the pictures we've seen from some of these NASA pictures. They're only releasing the low resolution versions, which each pixel is like half a kilometer or maybe a kilometer, but we haven't seen much of the high resolution imagery, which Ken Johnson had apparently saved because he was told at one point that all of these, they needed to make room and they were going to throw out all these slides, high resolution slides. He rescued them, and he knew Carol Rosin. Now, here's the thing that supported Ken Johnson for me. Carol Rosin, who was one of Steve Greer's witnesses, also said the same thing, that there were, Donna Hare. It was Donna Hare, who also had access to these NASA labs, that they were airbrushing out the photos of these artifacts. There was another person who said it. It was Lieutenant Sergeant Carl Wolf. Unfortunately, he passed on in New Hampshire from an accident while biking. So be careful, Willie. If you're biking in an urban area, there was an accident and his life was cut short. Carl Wolf, but he was also another Steve Greer witness, right? Who told us that he had been in one of these. It was one of these centers in Washington, D.C. I forget what National Picture Study. One of these intelligence agencies picture center. And this guy said, "Hey, do you want to see these interesting pictures? We found a base on the moon." And Carl Wolf told us how he looked and saw these structures and all this. And then someone came into the room. And the guy, wasn't supposed to show Carl any of this. It was the National Interpretive Picture Center or something. part of the National Geospatial Agency, whatever intelligence agency it was part of, that he saw this, and Donna Hare talked about it, and Ken Johnson talked about rescuing these photos from a NASA dumpster. He was told to get rid of them. And he said, what do you mean this is part of all the good photos and everything? I said, we need to get rid of them. We don't have room. But Ken Johnson saved one complete set, and that became part of his book, Ken's Moon, right? We said with Donna Hare. So I found Ken very convincing. I just wish we could hear from him again. Well, Ross Coulthard and Derek Shawnee talk about these types of pictures. And they go through this story recently of Buzz Aldrin's sighting of this very odd craft. Some of the pictures of Clementine, which was the backside of the moon. And they talk about... Now, I was told by Richard Hoover that he quit NASA because of the suppression of information. They didn't want him talking about the fossils he was finding in Earth meteorites that had crashed, carbonaceous meteorites on Earth from way out there in space had land. And when he cracked them open, Richard Hoover, being this world-leading exobiologist, astrobiologist, extremophiles, microbes that can live in very extreme hot or cold or radioactive environments. He said he always found these carbonaceous fossils, single-celled organisms, in all these carbonaceous meteorites, most of them. And NASA didn't want him talking about that. Well, according to Derek Shawnee, there was someone that worked on Clementine. I think it was a Professor Schultz from Brown University that also was told not to talk about anomalies from the backside of the moon that's illuminated by the Earth glow. And there are areas, as you can see here, that are blurred out, just like Ken Johnson told us, and Donna Hare, and Sergeant Carl Wolf, right? And so Buzz Aldrin apparently saw this object out the window of their Apollo mission. It had this other object near it. And according to this interview with Derek Shawnee and Ross Coulthard just in the past 2 weeks, and then the recent one a couple days ago, they asked, Cape Canaveral or wherever Houston, what is this object? Is this our rocket booster? And they were told, no, the rocket booster 6,000 miles away. So Buzz Aldrin said he never brought it up again. He never talked about it again. And then there were the Edgar Mitchell blue orbs that he said followed them to and from Earth. There's this famous image they talk about where Edgar Mitchell is walking on the ground there, as you can see in this photo. But when they did a light scan of this photo of Edgar Mitchell, what is this, which Apollo mission is this? 16? Am I wrong about that? You could see this little object here, and when they looked at it with light scanning, they saw this thing above Edgar Mitchell and then these blue lights, which is exactly what Edgar Mitchell said that he saw, but wasn't allowed to talk about it. So, guys, I'm just bringing this all up. Is there a really huge cover-up? Because people I've talked to, like Richard Hoover, say that NASA is covering it up, right? And Hoover quit over this. But this isn't the only person. This is not all we're talking about here. Another person I ran into, and I'm just running into these people at conferences. It's not like I'm seeking them out. An aerospace engineer that worked for an unidentified aerospace company, Phil from Colorado, I still maintain contact with, said that JPL was passing materials to his aerospace company, and the people who ran the aerospace company said to Phil, and this is in chapter 19, can you figure out how this works? This technology, this microtechnology, because the people that created it went away, and we can't figure out how it works. And Phil told me everyone in his group, they knew what was going on. They looked at it and said, this is not human technology. It's far too advanced. Yes, Apollo. Which Apollo mission was it? 14? I can't quite remember. So Phil wasn't the only person that talked about this. There was this witness for Stephen Greer, Paul, who I got to talk to at a publishing event in the Denver area a number of years ago, and he said this publicly. I'm not revealing anything that he didn't talk about. His dad worked at Area 51. That's why I'm not sure if the Obama comment is correct. His dad worked at Area 51, and he was on a team to reverse engineer extraterrestrial technology or wherever it's from. This advance, and he said, this is what Paul told me. His dad was on one team that worked on one component of this reverse engineered recovered craft. There was other teams working on other parts of it. They all got together out there at Area 51, and they put all their pieces together. When they tried to turn it on, it just blew up. And that was the end of the experiment. This is what Paul, his last name started with a C, I believe, said. You can look him up from the disclosure event from 2001 that Steve Greer held, right, at the National Press Club. And then another witness, a computer engineer that I've referenced, he described to me what this technology looked like at a nanoscale. He said it had these hexagonal structures and these wires of varying thickness that would move around. He drew a picture of it, and this is my recollection of what it looked like. And he said it was 1,000 years ahead of our technology. And he was someone that worked in the computer field. He would have known. He was one of the top guys. I hope he comes forward as be a witness. And he told me the isotopes were not natural to Earth, that this material was made from. It had to be from another part of the galaxy. But it was engineered atom by atom, which our technology doesn't do yet. And it directly modified the quantum field to change the density of the vacuum to create propulsion that way. And it was embedded in the hull of this craft. And even though he gave me his email, he never responded again. It's a kind of a famous person from Silicon Valley. That is just a couple witnesses to this material. So I'm just saying this, folks, because I've personally just met 3 people right here. I mean, Hoover, Phil, and this other individual, plus others that who haven't wanted me to mention them again. In fact, one of these guys said to me as we were leaving an event where I had just been presented. So how do I get these stories? I lecture around about these topics, right, guys? I give, talk at conferences. People come up to me, even at small venues, say, I want to share something with you, because maybe they've never shared it with anyone and they know I'll really listen. This guy said as he's walking away, just forget we ever had this conversation. And this is a person who told me about these reverse engineered material groups within large Fortune 500 corporations, which we all know. So why am I bringing this all up? Because this is really big. This disclosures, it's just like Michael mentioned fractals. This penetrates throughout our society like these fractal little roots and shoots throughout our economy, from special access program, black budget dollars. And this is our money collectively, so we should know what is going on. So if Trump is really serious about this initiative, or he said he wants to declassify this information about UFOs and aliens, as he put it in his tweet, like he likes to do, releasing people from their NDAs is step one, but it's going to take years and years to go through all the different programs of people who feel like it's been, yeah, it's effing gigantic, Jules. That's all I'm going to say, guys. I think it's freaking gigantic. And that's not even talking about people from the military. I've encountered some of these people like Gary, the missile security guard who saw this bright object. Now, I have his, let me bring it up because it was good here. I brought up some of this stuff ahead of time. Yeah, this guy. Let me show you. Go down here. Screen share. Can you see Gary? Yeah, on my YouTube channel. So this is the interview with Gary, the missile security guard. And Terry Lovelace, who you'll all remember from Incident at Devil's Den, worked in the Air Force, Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. Yeah, out there where he saw that triangular object hovering over the missile silo. He's working as a medic, called out there because some guy fell down a ladder, probably from the excitement from this, not a huge triangular object. This is Terry's story in his book, Incident at Devil's Den, and Devil's Den, The Reckoning, the follow-up, where he has people write in their stories. It's a small triangular, he said the size of like a VW bus or something, but it's hovering over the missile silo. They have their lights on it. It goes straight up. Well, here's another guy. I got to talk to him in Aurora, Colorado. We did this interview, and he said that they are, at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, he's responsible on the security alert team for checking the security of these missile systems, 10 Minutemen per launch group. And there's a missile launch facility, a launch control facility. You've heard Robert Salas and Dave Schindele talk about this because they were the launch officers. But the security guards are at the top side. He said the alarms are going off. They thought it could be jackrabbits or snakes or anything kind of moving around out there. He gets out there with his colleague, and there's something right landed by the missile, over the missile silo area. And he goes, it went straight up, blinding bright, and he and his colleague were burnt by the radiation, from this object. In fact, he said everything in the Jeep was burnt, including their M16s, the whole right side of the vehicle. They tried to hypnotize him. Now, guess what, folks? I knew someone in Wyoming. I stopped to talk to them once. It was Stanislav, who passed away recently, who had worked with the intelligence agencies. And I told him Gary's story. And guess what Stanislav Ojak told me? He had been offered the job of hypnotist in the early 70s at Minot Air Force Base, which corroborates Gary's story. Stanislav said he didn't take it, but yep, he was offered the job to be a hypnotist at Minot Air Force Base. And Gary said the hypnosis didn't work very well because he had a cold and everything, but they were trying to get all the information about these objects. He said objects were flying around. There were jets chasing them. They hadn't went to, the alert status was raised at the base and everything. It was a whole range of these northern tier missile events. In any case, how far, folks, does this extend? How many people, like Jules is saying, this is effing gigantic. Now, I know some of you listening right now know more about this, some less. I'm just going to tell you guys, this is huge. It's NASA. It's people who've worked in the military. There are other people I know who've worked in the military who I haven't named yet, who don't want to come forward because of the NDAs, who told me they've seen things, right, at Air Force bases, Wright-Patterson and so forth. Now, Wright-Patterson, seriously, there's this whole area out there called Area B. Let me see if I can find my slide of it, because when I've traveled across the country, I have stopped by, stayed at hotels right outside of Wright-Patterson, and one of them I got lost once and ended up by Area B. And I'll see if I can bring it up by the end of the broadcast, or I'll show you another time. It was really odd looking. I mean, there are lights and there's steam. I mean, this is where we're told the bodies are taken ever since Roswell. And let me show you another person that has completely validated this. Preston freaking Dennett. You know Preston Dennett. He's one of the best researchers out there on UFOs. He's done a whole bunch of videos recently. Just look him up. Preston Dennett on his YouTube channel. And Preston recently did 10 stories of crashed UFOs, alien bodies, and reverse engineering of ET craft. And I swear, folks, about 3 out of these 10 take place at Wright-Patterson. Of kids who were taken to Wright-Patterson Day by their dads. And they happened to walk off and look, and they saw a craft like this in the hangars. There's Stan Gordon recently, when we were, I was talking to him on the phone, and it's in his newsletters on stangordon.info, where he said he talked to the truck driver who drove the 65 Kecksburg wreckage to, of course, Wright-Patterson. Yeah, Preston's books are also excellent. You got to look at Preston's stuff because he does such an excellent job. So many stories. His wife does the graphics. It's excellent. And these videos, boy, guys, you could get so much education just listening to Preston Dennett's videos. Seriously. So Stan Gordon says that this truck driver said he was told, don't look around once you get to the base. This is 1965. It's before the days of when they blocked out the windows like those planes that fly from Vegas to Area 51 every day on whatever that airline is that's run by Area 51. And what I was told by someone that applied for a job on that airline that takes off every day from the airport in Vegas, they have their own hangar that goes to Area 51, and then it brings the scientists back, that they block. Once you get there, the windows are blocked out, and the flight attendants can't see out the windows. They're just waiting there to take these guys back at 3 at the end of the day. They fly in at 5 a.m. and they go back at 3 by the time it gets hot out there. And the flight attendants have to sit there. They're not allowed to bring any electronics on the plane. The only thing they're allowed to do is knit and read a physical book. No electronics allowed. No iPods, nothing like this. Okay, no iPhones. In any case, this is 1965. According to Stan, this truck driver actually did look around. I think he got out and he looked, and he said he saw a craft and little bodies there. He told this to Stan. He's no longer with us physically. He's passed on. This is what he told Stan a number of years ago. So Wright-Patterson is the center of a lot of these areas. If you listen to Preston's videos, it's people that worked there. There's a very kind of tough story of someone that said too much and got fired. I think he told his wife or something what he had seen there. This is plausible to me. I was at Phenomicon in Vernal, Utah a couple conferences ago. And there was someone there that was interested, heard us talking in the restaurant in Vernal, came over and had worked refueling one of the secret aircraft, one of those high-flying aircraft at 80,000 feet. It's a special type of fuel that it uses. He said to me and the group, he happened to walk up the ladder onto this platform around what is the plane? I mean, I think it's one of the ones, the successors to the Gary Powers incident, that plane. And he happened to look over into the next bay, and he saw a triangular sort of pumpkin seed triangular triangular shaped craft. There was some guy working there, and he said, what is that? And the guy said, you're not supposed to see this. This is the Aurora. This is a prototype. It was just a prototype, but it really existed. So people can see these craft who work around these bases and so forth. So I'm just saying this, folks, because no, it's not the X-15, Willie. It's the you guys can look it up. It's it's not the TR-3B. It's the that very high flying spy craft that had been modernized and so forth. It was that particular craft that at the time they didn't think the Soviets could reach it, when Gary Powers was shot down. By the way, I heard a lecture at the IRVA conference in Cloudcroft last October from Gary Powers' son. Gary Powers' son runs a spy museum, a history of the Cold War spy museum, not far outside. It's a little to the west of D.C. And he gave us a lecture on his dad, Gary Powers. I didn't know this, but Gary Powers, remember Gary Powers flies over. They don't think that the Soviets have a missile that can, and they're taking pictures. And Gary Powers was instructed to deny what the plane was really for. But the Soviets had designed a newer missile, and he got shot down, remember? And then he gets in that Tom Hanks movie, Bridge of Spies, where they exchange him for that Soviet spy. And his son wrote a bunch of books about this. It's very interesting. Yeah, the SR-71. I think it's the SR-71, yeah. And then Gary Powers actually, he was somewhat discredited because they didn't know how much he had said to while he was in captivity. It's really tough. But he didn't say anything he wasn't supposed to. And he was sort of in code saying things that would communicate back to the U.S. In any case, these sorts of things really exist. So the point of all this is, let me see if there's anything else I want to show you. It's going to take, yeah, exactly right. They traded him for this other guy that the FBI caught in Manhattan, who was a sleeper agent, right, back in the good old days of the Cold War, right? And that's what the Tom Hanks movie, Bridge of Spies, is about. Really great movie. They did a lot of research to make sure it was historically accurate. So, I attended this citizen hearing in 2013, and that was just 5 days. There were so many witnesses, folks. This is some of the witnesses who were there. You can see Stan Friedman, right, kind of upper center part there. There are a lot of witnesses to come forward about this. So we're just at the beginning of this process, and we don't know exactly, if President Trump, how much effort is he going to put into pursuing? He might do it. Just as an aside, fluoridated water is something I've been active in because I learned about the dangers of it from doing research back in 2005. There was a citizen initiative, which we got on the ballot here in Boulder, to get a cleaner fluoride product, not even just to remove it from the water, but to have a cleaner, food grade product instead of the scrubber waste from smokestacks that's imported from China, which has, cadmium and lead and arsenic. So RFK Jr., his health secretary, has been very active. The court case that came out a year or two ago where the EPA lost, where they have to prove now that fluoride is safe. It's been ruled to be a toxic substance. It's a neurotoxin. It's not good for kids or any of us to have it in our bodies, in my view. But RFK is the first person I've heard ever in D.C. to start talking about the dangers of fluoride. So just from that issue alone, by the way, we didn't quite get enough votes in Boulder to get our initiative passed. We lost by 700 votes, just a fraction of 1%. It was close. But now different states, Florida has banned it in water, and a couple other states have moved forward. And Utah banned it recently, their governor, adding fluoride to water. There's another state, I think, that did it, and other states that are now giving each municipality the freedom to choose. So I think even any administration, they can do things even if you don't agree with their main policies, like I don't with the Trump administration on many different levels. But there's still something positive that came out of it. And I think this UFO issue, this could really happen over the next couple of years if they're serious. Now, this is the ironic thing about it, is somehow the Republican Party is more tied to openness about this. Look at Representative Luna, Tim Burchett, and others who are, Burchett at least is a Trump supporter. He's come out and said this on his Twitter X account recently, but he's gung-ho for UFO disclosure. Politics makes strange bedfellows, as my father used to say. And we don't really know what's going to happen. So to go back to Michael's question at the beginning of this, we don't know exactly, but it's certainly, there is so much to come out. Just one example, what about all the triangular UFOs? This is David Marler's excellent book about the history of triangular UFOs. Do you think it started recently, reverse engineered UFO tech? No. According to Marler, the first sightings were in Alaska and Connecticut in the 20s and 30s of the previous century, 100 years ago. What was flying around triangular in the 20s and 30s? So my view on this, folks, is we don't know what's going on. And according to people I've talked to, people at OSAP, other folks, we don't really know how this technology works. The last time I've talked to them, this is a picture of me, and here's me I ran into Jay Stratton at the Phenomicon. He gave a talk there. You talk to people like this and you ask them what's going on. And, my view is I don't think they really understand. They may understand a glimmer of how the UFO, alien, extraterrestrial technology works. I don't think they've really figured out very much, according to the people I've talked to from OSAP and ATIP. Okay? But they may just realize how much they don't know. We're literally talking about space-time metric engineering. That's what Hal Puthoff calls it. We kind of understand the concept, but I don't think we understand. It's a resonance-based technology. You could disagree with that to the degree to which we understand it. In my view, we've got a long way to go. But what about all these programs? So, do you think people are going to be released from their NDAs? I mean, is Trump going to feel like he's in a situation? And, there's been a lot of debate about this over the past couple nights and days since this announcement last night. Is he just doing this? He says he's not interested in the topic, but at the same time, he says he wants to release the information. He's directing his Secretary of Defense to release the information. So how far is it going to go? Now, I understand, like Nancy's comment at the beginning of this, you don't have high hopes for this. But look, I worked in, as I mentioned before, I worked in Austria in 1989, just after Hungary stopped enforcing their border with Austria. They were part of the East Bloc, and they said, we don't want to do this anymore. We're not enforcing the border. You guys do it, Soviet Union. We're not doing it anymore. And they just took all their guard stations out, cut the barbed wire. I saw it in Austria. I working at Luxembourg in the EASA, the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, and the Young Scientists summer program. I went up to where the border had been. All the barbed wire was cut. And within, a couple weeks, all these East Germans were pouring through to the West German embassy in Vienna. And the West Germans said, well, they can stay as long as they want. And that really was the end of it for East Germany. You couldn't keep the people there anymore. They could just go through to Hungary and come out in Vienna. So within 5 or 6 months, East Germany ceased to exist. And that led to Glasnost and then Gorbachev, and then the Soviet Union ended. So from my view, folks, this can all proceed in a very chaotic way with no one really knowing exactly what's going to happen. I'm just saying, Nancy, I think it can happen faster than you might expect. We've all been subject to a lot of abuse over these topics, ridicule, disinformation campaigns, Susan Goff from the Pentagon with her psyops and all this stuff, where they feel that they can use our own tax dollars to disinform us. But once the dam starts to leak, you may not be able to contain the water. So here's the thing, folks. I don't think any of us knows exactly how this is all going to play out. But it certainly could, play out in different ways. Let me just see if anything else I wanted to bring up here. We talked about pretty much all the main stuff. So let's get to some of your questions. My view is anything could happen. Once you start, this is like unraveling a ball of string. And that's not even dealing with who these beings are. What's their role in what's going to happen? Guys, we don't really know. But once you start unraveling it from our side, from the aerospace industries, NASA, JPL, federal government, intelligence agencies, Department of Defense, whatever the motivation is, Mel, whether he wants to one-up Obama, I'm sure he does. Absolutely. Because Obama was doing that with him. So, there is definitely that sort of rivalry going on. But it also gives our country a chance to heal. I mean, Obama and Trump could align on this, and it would be an amazing thing for a bipartisan issue for us all to agree that we have the right to know what's going on here. It matters a lot. And this is a waste of energy and resources to try to keep covering it up. We've come very close to disclosure sometimes in the past in the United States. Remember in the previous live stream, I mentioned the movie UFOs. It has begun eventually re-released as UFOs, Past, Present, and Future, shown on CBS once apparently in 1974. Never released in movie theaters like Edwards Air Force Base intended. Pulled from the producers a couple of weeks before it's released, but there were copies out there, and it's on YouTube. That was a serious film in the 70s about UFOs. Take a look at it. There's stories of intelligence agencies and the CIA learning how to channel extraterrestrials by going up to talk to Mrs. Swan in Maine, and AFA, the extraterrestrial that the CIA was channeling. And even in the film, they said to this guy channeling, this intelligence officer, can we see your craft? And then right then and there, they look out, then they ask the air traffic control in Washington, D.C. So we lost all our radar suddenly. They look out the window and see something. It's a good movie. So I think that there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but it seems to be moving in the right direction. And literally, I mean, I can understand that people feel jaded by this and cynical. It's UFOs. It has begun. You can look it up. It's on YouTube. Or UFOs Past, Present, and Future with Jacques Vallée in it. So what are we dealing with here? Is it really extraterrestrials? Or are UFOs just a different state of reality, where reality becomes inverted, where there's all sorts of technologies and life forms there that we're not used to, along the lines, of dark matter monsters? Why are these things seen together? Why do we have portal areas, like Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona? Is this an inverted state of reality? Are we living in flatland? Have the leaders of our society wanted to keep us from understanding that we live in a multidimensional reality? Is that what this is about? What about the technology? I mean, there's so many unanswered questions, but the only thing we know, folks, is we're never going to be the same going through this process, because it's so much information is going to come out and people are going to start talking to us. And as we found out at the citizen hearing, there are so many people. Just in 5 days, we didn't have enough time just to hear the 40 witnesses. We had that new film from James Fox, Moment of Contact. You can see it on the streaming services. The original one from a couple years ago is about the Varginha incident from 1996, and he came out with a new version with new witnesses, and they had a hearing at the National Press Club a couple of weeks ago, including the surgeon that was there that got to be in the same room with one of these creatures from the crashed craft that hundreds of people in Varginha, Brazil, it's kind of Sao Paulo area of Brazil, who witnessed this from so many different vantage points. And this Moment of Contact movie, the new version, has newer witnesses, including the truck driver, one of the truck drivers who drove the wreckage to Campesinas airfield, where it went to, where else? Wright-Patterson. According to the witnesses, they had someone from the U.S. Air Force that said had to be at least 40 people that know what happened to that aircraft, because it went back to the U.S. It was, what was it, C-130 or something, allegedly to Wright-Patterson, of course, because that's the foreign technology division is there, and they reverse engineer, going back to the Cold War and World War II, they reverse engineer, well, not World War II, but right afterwards, reverse engineering other countries' aircraft, so it makes sense that they'd be the ones to attempt to reverse engineer the craft. So, any case, yeah. So, any questions of any sort of nature here? It's a fun topic. I would just say don't be too certain about how this is all going to play out, because I'm just pulling up, see if I can pull up a picture of where the wreckage may have gone. Wait a minute. Well, we'll get it for you next time. Here. Yes. Area B. Right outside the gates. It's a beautiful place, especially at night. It seems incredibly strange. And you wouldn't be surprised if there were extraterrestrial artifacts and bodies there, like we heard from Preston Dennis' video. In any case, folks, do we have any comments or questions? Let's take a look. So I'm just going to go back a bit. Yes, Snarf Music, I'm happy to see any of your videos. If you want to make them about this. And howdy, Patrick. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, but, it's what Jules said. This is really gigantic, and it's like unraveling a ball of string. You're not going to be able to ravel it back afterwards. So, maybe doing it in some sort of orderly way would make sense. It's just, if Trump and Hegseth really go through and start declassifying documents, you don't know what's in those documents. The presidents don't even know exactly what's there. It would really be like a dam that just starts with a little leak, or the kid with his finger in the dike from that Dutch Hans Christian Andersen story. Once the water starts moving, it's going to break the blocks and it's going to become a flood. because I think that there's so many people out there. I can tell you, folks, the people I've talked to want to tell their stories publicly. They're just afraid that they shouldn't because they signed NDAs, or they can get in trouble. And I'm talking people that I think have hinted to me they have seen extraterrestrial bodies, if that's what they are, in underground facilities. People like this. I think they would like to tell their stories, and I think that we need to go through this process because there's so much secrecy around it, and it's delaying our evolution as a species. If we're around other intelligent species beyond whales and dolphins and things like this, or your dog, if there are other intelligent species around us right now interacting with us, like Bigfoot or cryptids or whoever the ET, ultra-terrestrial, interdimensionals are, I just think it's our right to know who they are, because we're the ones footing the bill for this whole thing. We're the ones that the government is there to provide services to society. At least in our country it is. This is not an autocratic state. So it's power to the people, of the people, by the people, for the people. We have a right to know. None of these agencies have a right to conceal this information from us. Now, of course, we can all agree we don't want to release it in a way. Some of these people have expressed to me there could be national security implications, weaponization of the technology, so forth. Yeah, those are all real concerns. So it doesn't mean we can't start having an intelligent conversation. Now, when I talked to Richard Hoover, why they didn't want him talking, and this is someone with over 300 peer-reviewed papers and 30 patents or something, why NASA didn't want him talking about the fossils in meteorites from way out there that had literally showed us these look just like fossils on Earth. They said it would upset religious groups, and this came right from the White House. He was told it came from the White House under the Obama administration that this could upset religious groups, and they didn't want the political fallout. So these politicians, as someone just pointed out in the comments here, they're competing with each other. They want the power, they want the attention, and they don't want to do anything in the long run, even though it's beneficial to our planet and our society to start becoming educated on these topics. They're more interested in their re-election possibilities in the next election, right? So Hoover was told, and he said this was under the Obama administration, that the White House didn't want him coming forward, and that's why he quit. So there's a lot of people that are going to come forward, and there's going to be a lot of fallout. And if this affects world religion, so what? The government's not here to protect any religion. Whatever persuasion you are, the chips will fall where they will. I've been looking at some of the ancient scripture from the Tanakh, what we say in Hebrew, we call the Old Testament the Tanakh. There are the apocryphal texts from the Dead Sea Scrolls, texts that are not part of the formal tradition of Judaism, but some Judaic offshoots like the Ethiopian Jewish people accept the Dead Sea Scrolls. They talk about weird creatures and weird animals and desert howlers and Lilith and all these things. And there are references to strange beasts and things. There's the Ezekiel description of lights in the sky. Maybe it's already part of mainstream religions. It's just the formal versions of these religions, the conservative versions, would be Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. Maybe they haven't wanted to talk about it as much. But I feel that we have to adapt to reality and not stay within stories that are not telling us the whole shebang. Got it? So that's my view on it. And I say let the chips fall where they will. And the longer that this is suppressed, the harder it's going to be to face the truth, in my view. So, yeah. So anyway, guys, let's take a look at your questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Thanks for being here tonight. Yeah, so Nancy was mentioning the Spielberg movie. Yeah, the Spielberg movie's coming out. I've heard it has some crop circles in it. Yay. Uh, um, let's see. Yeah, we don't know, Willie, what they've discovered because not, we've had some people talking. The most recent hearing in front of Congress in September, we had Dylan Borland talk about seeing a triangular craft. What was it, over Langley Air Force Base? Or somewhere in uh, in Virginia, Hampton Roads, wherever that big naval base is out there. I forgot which base he was talking about. He said, and he felt static on his skin. He saw something. We had a whole bunch of people testifying last time. There's a lot of folks that have seen things, and we need to compare notes and get a sense of what's going on. Even if you think the extraterrestrial influence is negative, some of you might believe that. We've, the people from OSAP, ATIP, Lou Elizondo, and others talk about the threat. Well, whatever it is, the longer we take to talk about it, the worse it could be, whatever is going on. Are we being taken aboard craft experiments? We don't remember it. Guys, if this is going on, we need to find out about this. Now, I will tell you a story that Terry Loveland told me I needed to repeat because I had a conversation with him working on Black Swan Ghosts, and he told me this story. Terry Loveland, the author, a former, federal lawyer for federal government and a medic and so forth, a prosecutor. And he had his own encounter at Devil's Den in Arkansas when he and a buddy were taking a weekend off, and they were taken aboard into a triangular craft, and they were made ill by it when they were put back. They didn't remember it at first. They said there were human military types on board, and the Air Force seemed to know all about it when they found out because they'd left their tent there and just run for the cars, and they were like sunburned and everything, kind of like Gary, which is Hal Puthoff told us is a function of the variable permittivity of the way these craft affect speed of light being determined by permeability, permittivity. There's a blue shift, and it shifts radiation into the dangerous type of radiation why people get sick. It could be one of the reasons. But Terry told me this story that he got a call one day from DHS, and he said DHS wanted to hear all about the incident at Devil's Den. And when Terry got done recounting the story, it sounds like Ingo Swann from his book Penetration about his encounter with some intelligence agency that wanted him to remote view the aliens and stuff on the moon. Terry said when he was done telling the story, the guy said, well, we're treating extraterrestrial abduction of humans as a criminal activity. And Terry said, I didn't know the U.S. government had jurisdiction over extraterrestrials. And there was just silence on the other end of the phone. The guy didn't even laugh. That was supposed to be a joke. And he never heard from him again. And I've talked to other people at conferences who know people that work within the intelligence agencies, and they told me that this is taken very seriously, these abduction type events. Even people within the intelligence communities, DHS, have woken up outside their homes with the doors locked. They don't know how they got out there. Repeatedly. High-level people within our own government have had these experiences. And so it's affecting our society at the whole level. And I just feel like the longer we take to, you guys know, the longer we take to talk about it, the worse it's going to be. Okay. Yeah, so I agree, Nancy. The modern church rejected all the blurry stuff. There's a lot of blurry stuff. I listen to stuff from the Israeli Institute of Biblical Studies from Israel, and they look at all these different texts and look at the stuff that was left out. Very interesting to watch their videos on things that were left out of the Old Testament, New Testament, because it didn't fit the narrative. And we know there were times when the church removed some of the scriptures and so forth. So, yeah, have we been brought up with a censored view of reality? And I think, folks, that we're all adults here. We have these technologies to communicate with each other, right? we can start talking about it and work it out. But anyway, none of us know. So any more questions before we go? So in the Bible, there's all sorts of, they're talking donkeys, right? So is this just folklore, or is it actual accounts, of real creatures? It'd be easy to dismiss it just as a story. Maybe that's what it was. But people are experiencing this nowadays. There are all sorts of creatures and cryptids. Nancy and I have been on expeditions out there. There's another one coming up, another Olympic Strange Days in Forks, Washington, for people that want to go. I don't know if there's any space left, where we talk about these things and we pay attention around us, camping out there and so forth. People still encounter creatures like this if you do your research. So what are people encountering? Yup. Okay. Will says, scroll up to my question about the China probe. So Wills and I are friends from Manhattan. I was there from 2010 to 2019, and we shared an office space together in downtown. And we got to talk about these things occasionally. It was very, very interesting. Let me scroll up to your question, Will. See what is your question back up there? What might have they discovered? Bridge of Sighs is play. So the Bridge of Spies was a play on Bridge of Sighs. I didn't know that. I'm going back up. Wills, can you? I don't see your question here. Can you repeat it? I'm going way back up. Yes. I don't see it, Wills. What is the China probe? Oh, are you talking about that thing that was shot down over Alaska, the alleged Chinese balloon? Because there's a lot of questions what was shot down over Alaska a couple of years ago. You remember we had all these things coming over from China, including that balloon that traversed the entire U.S. and was eventually shot down over the East Coast? But that was just one of several objects. Now, we're told by the pilot, according to what I heard over Alaska, there was a very strange object that got shot down over there. No one knows what that was. So, so here, let me just throw one more thing in here that Lukatsky talks about over and over again. James UFO Lukatsky. You listen to his interviews with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, and he says a UFO sighting is more than a UFO sighting. And this is what Jacques Vallée always said, and this is an important point. People that have contact with these life forms and this technology, they have paranormal experiences around their homes. Just reading his second book, Initial Revelations, he talks about Kenneth Arnold. Did any of you know that Kenneth frickin' Arnold in 1947, the original UFO sighting in the U.S., at least the main one, over Mount Rainier, the 7 objects skipping like saucers in the water, what Kenneth Arnold, working for Search and Rescue at the time, looking for another downed craft over Mount Rainier, according to Lukatsky, he experienced orbs in his home afterwards, disincarnate entities, all the spooky wooky stuff. And what did they call it back in 1947? I mean, the hitchhiker effect is a new term, but what is this? Why would, I mean, I have my own ideas about it. We'll go into it another time. And Jules is familiar with this, but what about UFO sightings would also let you see shadow people and hear things? And why does this happen around Bigfoot encounters? Why is there such a ghostly aspect to all of this, if it's just nuts and bolts technology from another planet? No, Wells, you're not a heckler. China sent a probe to the far side of the moon. Yeah, they brought back samples. And okay, I'll do a little more research into that. Thanks, Wells. So China's had a probe. They went to the moon. And now we're talking about sending more probes back to the moon. SpaceX, right? Sent up a rocket with 2 probes that are going to the moon. Is that right? Or was it 2 tests of probes that could go to the moon recently? So there's talks about going back to the moon. Musk has been talking about going to Mars. So at the end of the day, there's no way to cover all this up. It's going to come out. If these lunar anomalies are there, at some point we're going to see that. Now, why do these institutions hold back? My view as a sociologist, I mean, I know I talk a lot about physics and I play one here on YouTube, but my training is as a sociologist. These institutions don't want to change. All the people who work in these institutions, they're on the gravy train from the existing status quo. And even in the Brookings report, like Derek Shawnee talks about with Coulthard, they go through it in these videos. He reads through the Brookings report. They say that scientists and engineers are the last people that are going to want to talk about this because it totally shatters their paradigm. And talking to someone who's been through academics, got a PhD, there's a conservative effect, which I've attempted to resist my whole life, of getting your mindset, hardening of the attitudes, getting your mindset fixed in and then focusing on promotion, grants, and tenure, all that stuff. People don't want to change their point of view. They're afraid of ridicule by their colleagues. There's the giggle factor. Coulthard and Derek Shawnee say that this Professor Schultz wanted to talk about anomalies and those lunar transit phenomena, something we remote viewed back at the Farsight Institute back in 96 when I was training there and then teaching there. They wouldn't even let Professor Schultz, I think that's his name, from Brown, look at lunar transient phenomena, which those don't have to be UFOs necessarily. It's hot spots. It's things that there is that famous frame of one of the lunar landers taking a picture of something coming below them and a light flashing up from the crater. They showed this on, they go through some of this footage in this video. It's worth watching. But apparently there were two other people that Professor Schultz knew about that had been fired over interest in lunar transit phenomena. Isn't that exactly what Richard Hoover is telling us happened to him at NASA? Where he quit ahead of time. But people were fired. These are just flashes of light. Guys, this could be cold fusion, LENR, low energy nuclear reaction, coherent energy. Those two Israeli geologists, Golat, I think, and the other one, just a couple months ago published an article why they think cold fusion LENR is what produces the elements in the Earth's core and the crust. From compression, you get nucleonic transmutation, which is what we've learned about from Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, Fleischmann and Pons doing those initial cold fusion experiments at the University of Utah. And you get this nucleonic transmutation. You get other elements. Maybe that's why we have so many different elements on Earth. The Golat and Vols, I think is the name. They say that satellites that detect dust in the interstellar winds, there's no heavy elements coming across in those dust heavier than uranium. It doesn't explain why you have heavy elements on Earth. It can't be coming from the interstellar dust. It has to be coming from the Earth, which would be transmutation happening from LENR, low energy nuclear reaction, coherent energy transformation, like a coherent matter type effect, which has been shown by Proton 21 labs, Kyiv, Ukraine, Stanislav Adamenko, something like 10,000 continuous successful experiments creating transmutation, which is why they were bought by Department of Energy and eventually moved to Oak Ridge. And they've been publishing papers from the same people from Proton Labs now in the U.S. So there is this transmutation. So maybe the lunar transient phenomena is a cold fusion LENR phenomena that happens naturally in geological systems, right? So why fire people over this? Is ridiculous, guys. This is censorship. This is everything that we didn't like about dictatorships, and we're doing it to our own scientists in the U.S. And these institutions are very conservative, and maybe it takes something like Trump, JFK, RFK Jr. to break up some of these ingrained, rigid institutions that don't want to change. And the only way to change is to say, okay, we're declassifying everything. JPL, where's the... We're talking about reverse engineered. We're talking about materials from other places. So when's it going to come out, folks? What do you think? Should I take a poll here? I don't think I know how to do that yet. in Ecam Live. But is this coming out in the next couple months, years? What do you think, Nancy? Is it going to come out in years and years and years? We're going to be still, or is this coming out next year? Are the aliens going to land? I don't know. None of us really know. But guys, at least this is exciting. I mean, you could wake up any day and anything could happen in this topic. I just predict. Here's my prediction. Let's see if I'm wrong. I just think it's going to start a slow leak. It's going to encourage whistleblowers to come forward. I know these people. I think they would like to come forward if they didn't feel like they'd be hurt. Retired people from military intelligence agencies, the aerospace. I think these folks would like to come forward and tell us what they've seen, but we need to do it in a way that doesn't harm, national security. But there's also the human side of this. It's not healthy for people to keep repressing this information, given that they want to share it with us. And it's someone from OSAP ATIP told me this is the main hurdle to scientific progress in the U.S. Right now, it's affecting all of us. He said to me that this is just like Sputnik in 1957. There's so much siloed information in these special access programs. People come up against engineering and scientific problems. There's no one to talk to, and there's no progress scientifically. This person told me the money's good, but the science isn't, and that we're in danger here in the U.S. of losing our scientific and technological lead easily to China. When I read Science Magazine, all the cool stuff about metamaterials and topological insulators and plasmonic interactions with phonons and all this cool ways that materials can act like waveguides, so much of it coming out of China. So we're in danger of losing our edge here because we can't talk to each other about it because it's classified, and the people I talk to can't say very much, and they can't talk to each other. And this is what eventually destroyed the Soviet Union. They were ahead in electronics over the U.S. Just go to the Space Museum in Alamogordo, where we went from Cloudcroft, to look at the Space Museum where the Project Paperclip was operating. You had all those German former Nazi German scientists. And they have the Space Museum in Alamogordo where the space program started, right? Where NASA started. And you will learn that the Soviet Union was ahead in vacuum tube technology for a long time. And they were going to take the lead, but there's so much, inefficiencies and corruptions within the Soviet system that it fell apart. And this could affect us too with excessive classification. The Clintons talked about declassifying things. So did Obama. So this excessive classification has a downside. So we need to deal with this, and we need to deal with it soon. And we need to start talking about this topic. Okay. So that's a few more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up, folks. Thank you very much. What do you think? Yeah, I agree, Nancy. I think real declassification is begun. And our current president is someone that might do this unintentionally or not, just because he likes being the center of attention. Narcissistic people like to be the center of attention, and this is one way to get attention, is to say, I'm going to be the UFO president, right? Chris Bledsoe. I don't know a lot about Chris, but from what I've heard from people that know him, he seems legitimate and he seems very sincere, and I've heard about some of his encounters. So I'm not really an expert on Chris Bledsoe, but I know a little bit, and some of it, the stories sound very interesting. Why not now? It's happening now. Why not? Nancy says, I'm not holding my breath, but we could get some interesting, yeah. Or it could turn into a flood, Nancy, and we can't hold it back because you get whistleblowers, these run-on. At some points the rats are going to want to jump off the ship. And we know from this testimony to citizen hearing, illegal things have happened. People have been silenced. We were told in Moment of Disclosure, Ross Coulthard has talked about it, that people have been silenced over this topic one way or another. And it's very serious. Criminal activities have taken place to conceal it, just like Watergate. So, yeah, it's a legal issue. It's the accountability of our legal system. And do we have a constitutional system? We're wondering that now because of current events, but is this an even deeper phenomena corroding our rule of law in this country, damaging the economy, right? Because we're not making as much progress as we could, right? Maybe the technology's already leapfrogged what we're putting in electric cars, and they could be affordable for those who want them. So the why is important, yeah. Why is it happening? Yeah. So Willie says China's offering. Yeah. So I see these guys. Science Magazine faced this ethical issue too because of the Chinese 1,000 Flowers program. I forget what they call it. 100 Talents, 1,000 Talents program. Yeah, that's what you could see these ads in Science Magazine recruiting American scientists to go work with it. Very generous packages. Very problematic, right? Silicon disrupted vacuum tubes. Exactly right. But initially, vacuum tube technology was ahead. And we were told at the Space Museum that JFK started the moon program to send astronauts to the moon because we were terrified. There was one woman cosmonaut in the Soviet Union that had more space hours logged than all our astronauts put together. There was this fear that we were going to be overtaken by the Soviet Union. Their technology was developing. That's why we had a government-led space program. We had to do it, or we would have really fallen behind. So eventually silicon disrupted vacuum tubes, but what's the next technology past silicon, right? Space-time metric engineering. What is it going to be? And are the current interests holding that back? How does it work exactly? What do we know about it? What don't we know about it? Some of the people that know about this, folks, have said they're not going to talk about it because they would rather no one get it than our adversaries, who are autocratic dictatorships. Not to say that our country isn't starting to look like that a little bit too sometimes, but that it's a game changer. We're talking, and I can tell you this from studying ball lightning. You look at these papers on ball lightning from the Air Force, from Eric Davis in 2003, J. Reese Roth in 95. I mean, they references to classified research in ball lightning because it has anti-gravitic ramifications. It affects propulsion. The drones, New Jersey drones, quote unquote. How do they stay aloft for all those hours? Are we already seeing this technology, folks, in the new East Coast drones? Because I've talked to people from New Jersey. I have friends in New Jersey who've seen them. They've given me phone numbers of people to call who've seen them hovering over their homes all night, the sizes of SUVs. What is that? Is that next generation technology? Does someone already have it? Is it a private corporation? I don't know. I'm just throwing out questions here. Right? Who has the technology? How do they keep things aloft for hours at a time like that? I like tube amps, and I'm mainly an acoustic guitarist. You can find my music on all the streaming services. This is what I do when I'm not doing this stuff. I just like to write songs. And I like to play wooden and acoustic instruments because I like the resonance, and I think there's a lot we can learn from coherent sound from instruments and how to use sound to create ionic plasma waves, which is what I think cryptids and Bigfoot are using. You will see this in this upcoming movie from the Flash of Beauty crew, Voices in the Wilderness. I'm in there, I think, talking about ion acoustic waves, which come from plasmas and coherent matter. I think we interact with that through instruments. So I don't use a lot of amplification. And generally, yeah, tube amps have a certain sound. I think it's not psychoacoustics, Willie. I think tube amps, they have a certain warmth to them that the transistor sound doesn't have. Now, on these emulators and things that we have in our computers now, they're emulators for all these different types of tube equipment. When I use amplification, and I know Nancy's a musician too, I like the cleanest sound I can get. So if I'm going to use tube emulate or something, just a tad, because I want the brightness coming from the acoustic instruments. And you get that with transistors a little better. The tube amps kind of give you a little more mid-range. And you guys know from going to concerts, you want to hear that sort of bright sound from the acoustic guitar. You're going to lose a little bit of that with the tube equipment. So I generally use silicon amp just because as an acoustic guitarist. But, you know, all these other, we're going to have some other live streams about acoustics. We're going to talk about this. But yeah, thanks for the question, Mother. Yeah, okay. Jules is bringing up Department of Energy. Thank you, Jules. Does this declassification effort of Trump, if you're listening, Donald, does this extend to the Department of Energy? Because I've talked to people from the Department of Energy about plasma research. These are classified programs. As I mentioned before, they've taken cold fusion companies from Ukraine in the past and brought them over here. Proton Labs. Look it up. A lot of it's hard to get information about it, but you can see the papers written by the same people who were writing these papers in Kyiv, Ukraine before. Now they're working for DOE. It kind of indicates that this is real technology, or DOE wouldn't be investing in it, would they? So DOE has its own classification system. Some people have suggested that because DOE has jurisdiction over radioactive contamination, they can take over these UFO crash sites and perhaps create the secrecy. Now, I mentioned Gary Sterling before on this one thing before. This is worth looking at. Gary said to me in the second, it's in the next YouTube video, he was offered jobs for UFO crash retrievals, guys. He was absolutely offered these types of jobs. And he told me that they were only looking for people that could go out for 6 months at a time. They couldn't have a family. There were no breaks. There are no going into town. These are locations they wanted sealed off. And Gary, someone suggested to me, were these Broken Arrow flights, you know, flights with nuclear weapons that crashed, that type of thing from the Air Force. Gary said no. He talked to people that came back from these programs. They were UFO programs and, you know, crash retrievals in remote locations, some along the Canadian-U.S. border, very remote locations. They only wanted people that could go out there for 6 months. And he said you didn't get to go into town and take a night off. And his job wouldn't have been, he wasn't the guy digging in the ground or anything like this or extracting. He was just there for security on the perimeter, miles from the site, to reroute traffic, stuff like that, to make it look like a logging operation or bridge construction. Get it? To disguise it. And I've talked to people who've know friends from high school that have participated in these crash retrievals. It's really serious. There's a high level of security, and they're authorized to shoot Americans who show up at the site. That's what I've been told. In the case I knew about from Arizona, no one showed up. It was in a remote desert location. But so Jules' question, it's a serious question. Is it DOE? Do they have they have their own classification system? Good point. This needs to be brought up at the next congressional hearing. And yeah, thank you for the point. If DOE has jurisdiction, yeah, you get the point. Okay, thanks, Craig. Enjoy having you watch my videos and the RV. So Nancy's saying that her preferred tube amps. Yes, well, maybe we'll compare sometime. But when I've plugged in my acoustic to electric amps, I don't get the same tone out of these newer amps that are designed for acoustic instruments, personally. But we should compare sometimes. Maybe there's two amps that work well with acoustic equipment, right? I'm not talking about Marshall stacks and things that Peter Townsend and Jimmy Page like to use, because those, when you plug in through those, it's not the sound I want anyway for my acoustic. In any case, yes. Hello, Greg. Noah. Yeah. What about the people from? What was the fellow who recently testified from NOAA in the congressional panel? And yes. So the link above is for Gary. So anyway, folks, if I've run across these people, just kind of sort of just being interested in the topic, researching it, without looking for them, then there have to be a lot of them out there. Okay, folks. Nancy says the new tube amps are good. Cool. I will be looking for these. We will plug in and see how it sounds. Maybe they've adapted it so it's not for heavy metal and electric guitars. If it's adapted for acoustic, if it gets the full range, it would be cool. So, guys, Wall of Sound. Yeah. The Beatles Wall of Sound. That's definitely a very interesting effect. Who was the guy that developed Phil, what's his name, developed the Wall of Sound? Yeah. In any case, folks, any more questions? Guys, it's 2 hours. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, and we will have future live broadcasts. Thanks again for watching tonight. Again, we'll see what happens. Maybe there'll be nothing immediately visible, but I think the gears have started to move here, and I think we're going to see some progress. I think it's going to really accelerate into next year. That's my view. So stay tuned to this. Phil Spector. Yeah. Thanks, Nancy. It was Phil Spector, the Wall of Sound. Yes. So, yes. Okay, folks. Thanks very much. Appreciate your participating tonight. We will see you in the next video. Have a good one. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Take care for now, and bye.